was born on 24th of March 1950 in Mumbai. He is a leading Indian ad film director, best known for his work on the famous Pepsi TV commercial with Amitabh Bachchan and Sachin Tendulkar. He is the founder and main director of Genesis Film Productions, one of India's leading production houses established in 1977. Prahlad Kakkar grew up in Mumbai and his father was an army colonel based in Pakistan. His mother is half Burmese and half Marathi. He also did his initial schooling from St. Joseph's Academy, Dehradun. In 1966, he passed out from Sainik School, Kunjpura, Karnal, and in 1970, he graduated with economics in honors from Ferguson College, Pune. He's an avid scuba diver and in 1995, along with his wife, Mitali Kakkar, set up Lakadivs, a scuba diving school at Kadmat Islands in collaboration with the government of Lakshadweep. Mr. Kakkar has also been inducted in the Indian Ad Film Makers Hall of Fame. He has also won numerous awards for several of his ad films for brands such as Pepsi, ITC and PG, among others.
Friends, I have great pleasure in presenting this award. RI District 3140 presents the Creative Business Leader Award to Shri Prahlad Kakkar in recognition of his outstanding contribution in the field of advertisement and films at this WOW District Conference. I'll request RIPR to present it to him. Please, sir. And the certificate in honor of your visit to us, Mr. Prahlad Kakkar. Thank you for contributing towards my 1 year's education. This is from Firdaus Khan, 8 years old. She's the one. If you can focus on this. This is in honor of your visit to this DISCON.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and please respond.
It's a bit overwhelming for me to come to such a large hall with such a distinguished audience. Most of the time I'm addressing kids who are about below 20. And the reason why I feel comfortable with them is because I never grew up after 18. So with adults, I always have a slight problem because they've grown, I haven't, I've remained where I was. And sometimes we don't communicate too well, just like we don't communicate with our children. So, excuse me if I'm slightly out of sync. Before we go on, one of the most prized gift that I have today is a signed speech of Mr. Godrej. And the funny thing is, he hasn't quoted from anyone else. He has actually taken the trouble to write it himself. So I think the last time he wrote such an interesting, moving poem was when he was wooing his wife. Is that right, Mr. Godrej? So, when I was given the subject of culture, I said, oops, you have the wrong guy. Because when I got married to my Bengali wife, her family turned around and looked at me and said, you are Punjabi. So I said, well, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but a lot of Punjabi, no doubt. So they said, we are cultured, you are agricultured. So I said, you got the wrong end of culture. I'm the agricultural part of the family. You should have got my wife to talk about culture, as they say. However, You know, I've spent my entire life with young people. The average age of my office is 24. And I'm the youngest person in that office. And the reason why I'm so young is because they've taught me more than I've taught them. And they've taught me something invaluable, both culturally and equipped me with what we need to actually live life in today's world. Because today's world is very different from yesterday's world. And yesterday's world, when I say this, I'm talking facts, which is we have changed as a society and possibly as a culture more in the last 10 years than we have in the last 100. Now, that kind of change is not always a nice change. That kind of change is almost like a revolution. It's not like an evolution. It's not gentle. It's not easy. It doesn't take everybody with it. It leaves large segments of society out. Because some of us can't cope with the technology of today. And what defines today's world from yesterday's world is technology. And the technology gives us access to knowledge and information at such a rate that has never been known to humankind ever before in its history. So today at your fingertip, you can figure out what's happening in the North Pole, South Pole, this part of the world, that part of the world. The whole world is shrunk into a computer screen. And we today have access to that. We also have the right to take away from that information what we want and to leave out what we don't want. But some of us have not been able to cope with that overloading of information. And so what we do as a people is when you can't cope, you reject. What you reject is you go back to comfort foods. When you don't like exotic food from all over the world, as Indians, what do we go back to? Khichdi. It's a comfort food. We're comfortable with it. It's what we've grown up with. Now, you go back to khichdi, but we cannot have a culture that has become khichdi. Culture is a dynamic force. It's not like tradition. Sometimes we get mixed up between tradition and culture. And we shouldn't be. Tradition is tradition. That is what is the solid value system of an entire society that we've actually grown up with. Values never change. The methodology of how we accept those values is what culture is. That changes every single day in your life. Because if it doesn't change, then you're dead. You can't compete. You can't grow. You can't examine. You can't examine yourselves. You can't examine the world. You can't stand tall. Because when you do evolve as a growing culture of a nation, then you stand one with other nations. When you stop growing as a cultural nation, then you stand outside of other nations. And you are not inclusive. You're going backwards instead of going forwards. So when you understand what value stands for in your tradition and in your culture, then the culture can change. If you do not understand the value of your traditions and your culture, then you're a hodgepodge, you're a khichdi. Because the basis of all change is the confidence of value. Every one of us in this room is here because we've added a value to whatever we do. We are judged by that value. Every single person in this room adds a different connotation of value to whatever he brings, which is why he's here, which is why his friends appreciate him, which is why he's looked forward to, which is why he's welcome in people's homes, which is why he becomes a friend, a brother, a mentor, a leader, because of the value that you create. I lecture a lot in B schools, and I asked them once a question. I said, after you finish your business management school and your parents have spent really lots of money on you, and you go back to your dad and you tell him, Dad, I want to be a mochi. What will happen to your dad? And what will happen to your mom? So everybody says, my dad will go have a cardiac. He'll have to be put into ICU for a while. And I said, what about your mom? She said, she'll be probably worried about him. I said, no, your mom will understand that you want to be a Jimmy Choo. So that Jimmy Choo is a mochi with value. And why will your mom understand and not your dad? It's because your mom dreams about owning a Jimmy Choo and your dad can never afford it. So when you go back after an MBA and say, I want to be a mochi, there's possibly that she'll turn around and say, well done, son, maybe I'll be able to own one of your shoes, if not Jimmy Choo's. So what is value? Value is what you create. The value is created by individuals and by human beings and by endeavor. And when the underlying basis of culture is value, nothing can stop you. Not as an individual, not as a society, not as a nation. But we must understand that value is the basis of all real preciousness. And value is the grounds for culture. And every individual adds value. When you add 2 and 2 and it equals to 4 in a maths class, that's mediocre in terms of value. If you add in 2 and 2 and it isn't 22, there's no value. So value is like magic, but it's created with sweat and blood and with inspiration. So when you look at it and say, can I make 22 out of 2 plus 2? You say it's not possible, it's not logical. But when you do it and you look back and you say, I did it. So it might not be 22, it could be 18, it could be 16, it could be 14. But any multiple after 4 is a value that can be evaluated. 4 is mediocre because everybody arrives at 4. So what differentiates one human being from another human being is the value that you create. And that value remains with you. Because once you've created that value, you own it. Which is why when we form a culture of work, what is the difference between one person working and another person working? The difference is value. What is the value? When you do a job, you're creating no value. When you own the job, that's when you start creating the value. So in today's so-called work culture, if management does not understand the difference between his employees owning their jobs and doing a job, then that company or that endeavor will invariably fail. And I'm not talking about just of India, I'm talking about the world. In the last 15 years, some of the biggest companies in the world which deal in billions and billions of dollars of value created have failed. Only for one reason. Because they couldn't cope with the change. They could not cope with the change in their societies. They could not cope with the change that was expected of them as leaders in their industry. And because they could not cope with the change, they died. The first of these so-called technological giants that failed was a company called Ericsson. Heard of it? 12 years ago, it was the largest phone company in the world, #1. Today, you wouldn't find Ericsson anywhere except in Gujarat after lights out. The next company that actually failed was Nokia, which was a huge giant in the same field, 10 years later. And then there's BlackBerry. And then there's one, then there's another. And today it's IBM. IBM, a blue chip, a company that was as solid as a mountain, like God. Today IBM is on the verge of collapse because they haven't been able to keep up with the change. Not just technology, but in thinking. So if we do not imbibe for the future of our children and us the culture of change, then there'll be no culture left. And change comes about with value adding. When you start adding value to what you do, you can cope with change. You are ahead of the curve. And you'll always be ahead of the curve. So, how do we turn the pyramid upside down? My advice to all of us sitting here who run companies, own companies, work in companies at very senior levels and create values or don't create values is that we have to empower young people to make decisions. You have to reward them for decision making and not reward them for doing nothing and not making a decision and sitting on their asses and passing files around. You have to reward them for having the courage to make a decision. Remember one thing, so far in your lives, my life to a very large extent, we have been always allowed the huge power of saying no. But you have always been questioned when you say yes. The power of no is massive because nobody questions you if you say no. You create massive damage because you can say no and get away with it. But very few people have the courage to say yes because once they say yes, they own that responsibility. They own that job. And they have to carry the job on their own shoulders and justify to everybody in the company or in their society, why did they say yes? But when you say no, nothing. No accountability whatsoever. So let's not become a culture of naysayers because it adds no value. Let's try and become a culture of decision makers and yes-sayers because then we'll add value, we'll become richer than you can ever imagine culturally. Now that is going to do a lot of thinking, a lot of doing because we have got into the habit of not taking decisions, of deferring decisions, of passing decisions on to somebody else. And when the boss finally is faced with a decision, he himself is not willing to take a decision. So what does he do? He calls a group of people and does what is called consensus. You know what decisions that are made by consensus look like or are described as? The minutes of a meeting. They're not decisions. They're only minutes of a meeting. And then they can never add value. It takes one man to make a difference and say yes. And now let's go with this. It takes 3 men to say but. So let's not say but, what, if. Let's research it. Let's ask 5 other people. Let's ask everybody. Because you'll only lead to enormous destruction of value. People like Mr. Godrej are what he is because at a very early age, he was encouraged to say yes and take decisions rapidly and quickly, which is why he was always on top of the curve and never chasing it. There's a huge difference between chasing success and being on top of it. And the difference is in making decisions very quickly and ahead of the market. And that is what it's really all about. And when we talk about culture, and we talk about food, we talk about dress, we talk about rituals, we talk about traditions, we are confused. That is not culture. Look at Japan today. It's considered among the most cultured people because they actually worship tradition. They worship tradition. It's called Shinto. It's the second religion of the state. But they are one of the most progressive nations in the world because they add so much value to what they do. The work culture of Japan is second to none. And that's the difference between tradition and culture. Let's not get confused. Tradition is what this country's 2,000, 5,000-year-old history is about. Culture is about the future. So let's not hide behind culture and take 2 steps back. Let's take culture, wave it as a flag, and take 5 steps forward. Because culture changes all the time. It changes every single day. Every single moment that you're exposed to the world and the information that you are now on tap with, your basic fabric of your culture changes. So by taking in things from outside does not weaken your culture or your values. It enriches it. So let's not be frightened about cultural invasion, what we talk about politically, because that is rubbish. There is no such thing. We will always be Indians. Even 1,000 years from now, we'll still be Indians. There's an Indianness about the way we look and approach life, which nobody can take away from us. So why are we scared? We're scared because we don't want to make decisions. So when you break the shackles of that and start making decisions, then you'll realize what value really is. Now, I've, over a period of time, collected a whole lot of work because I'm an advertising professional. I've collected a lot of advertising work from all my competition and my colleagues. And there are some films which I always felt I wish I had done them because they added so much value to the brief. So we'll have a look at some of them. And let's see if you agree with me that 2 and 2 should be 22 and not 4. And that is the groundwork and the greatest baseline of all culture. So let's have a look at some of them. Can we go to the menu? Can you see the Cadburys film?
कुछ खास है हम सभी में, कुछ बात है हम सभी में, बात है खास है, कुछ स्वाद है, क्या स्वाद है,
Cadburys Dairy Milk, असली स्वाद जिंदगी का.
You remember this film? It changed many things. And a lot of the traditionalists said, ये क्या बेहुदा चीज कर रही है ये औरत? ये हिंदू नारी नहीं है. एक तो इसने फ्रॉक पहन रखा है, फिर ऊपर से बॉब कट है, लिपस्टिक पहनती है. This was 18 years ago, huh? This film was made 18 years ago. It's not today. But what did it do to this country? This one film. Every woman 18 years ago who saw this film said, that girl is me. Her spirit is my spirit. I might not have the guts to do what she did, but in my heart, I am her. And we've come a long way from that girl. Because today, everybody does not say that I cannot do what she did. Everybody says, I can. Especially the women. Not necessarily the men. The men are still stuck 18 years ago. But the women have changed today to this girl. Second thing what happened was a company like Cadburys, which was a British company, suddenly was convinced that they are not a chocolate. If they want to succeed in India, they have to be chocolate. And if they can't be chocolate, they'll always be a foreign import. This film started that journey for Cadburys, which went on to say, Pappu pass ho gaya, which went on to say, thoda sa mitha ho jaye, and so forth and so on. And the architect of that campaign was a man called Piyush Pandey. His destiny was linked to this product. So from a lowly translator in O&M as a copywriter, he went on to become the chairman of this company. And today your Diwali hampers are 60% chocolate and 40% laddus. At that time when this film was made, it was 3% chocolate or chocolate, and the rest of it is all barfis and laddus. Do you remember 20 years ago, when you got your Diwali hamper, how many chocolates were there? Today, 60% of a Diwali hamper is chocolate. And most of it is Cadburys. So that is the kind of power that value creation actually creates. Let's say Ericsson.
Hello.
Hi.
What are you doing tonight?
Me?
Join me for dinner.
Sure.
See you at 8. One black coffee, please.
Ericsson mobile phones. Surprisingly small.
This was one of the most successful commercials made in this country at that time because it introduced a mobile phone from Ericsson which you could hide in your hand. And what better way to say it? It far exceeded the brief. Nobody ever forgot it once they saw it. But what happened to Ericsson itself? Ericsson died because they couldn't cope with the change. I'm talking 15 years ago. And 15 years, the kind of change that happened in the cellular market of telephones, Ericsson couldn't keep up with it. So that is what it's all about. Your culture is not enshrined in stone. Your culture is created with value. And it's changing all the time. And so we should not be afraid of that change. We should actually welcome it because it only strengthens us. Let's say TOI paper.
Excuse me, This pension file of mine, where should I give?
It's an exciting game of hockey, attacking from the right flank, crosses the central line and intercepted there by Dharampal and deflected to Sukhwinder. Sukhwinder passes to De Silva. De Silva pushes to Mohammad Shahid. Mohammad Shahid takes possession of the ball and scoops it to Fernandes. Fernandes redirects it to Tim and Robinson. And a very close tackle there. And that's an infringement. And once again, attacking from the left flank, crosses center line, wonderful turn, enters the deep, but cleared there by the defender, out of the sideline, and a disappointed retreat into the midfield, and ball finds Stanley. Stanley takes a good look and passes it to Balwinder. Balwinder takes control and sweeps across the field to Rajendar, but Rajendar, without seeing, scoops the ball to Andrews. Andrews misses the ball completely, and ball reaches Pillai. Pillai gently taps to the captain. Captain takes possession, aimless dribbling, trying to slow down the game, time-wasting technique, and a warning from the referee. And once again, with full force, attacking from the right flank, dribbling, crossing the center line, fantastic move towards the D, enters the D, and a dangerous tackle by the defender there. Referee intervenes. The situation is very tense. Anything can happen. Referee consulting the linesman, an appeal for green cards. The green cards are out, and it's a penalty corner. Push from the corner, quick collect, quick release, and goal! India has won!
Oof, what a game, no? Had fun?
Yeah.
Some things never change. But today, we are on the brink of a breakthrough. Because technology is actually making things far more transparent and far more efficient. And there is hope that in the next 10 years, that we will have a change, even in government offices. So while there's hope, there's life. And the value adding that technology is going to bring to our work culture is going to hopefully change this film, which has been hanging around for the last 15 years, and everybody identifies with it and says, "Ye to hakikat hai, ye to kabhi nahi change hone wala." Let's see Pepsi.
Yehi hai right choice, baby.
Hi, I'm your new neighbor. Can I have a Leher Pepsi?
Yeah, sure. Yes! Oops. और कुछ चलेगा?
नहीं, Pepsi नहीं है तो.
ना, no problem.
You okay in there?
ये लहर Pepsi.
That must be Sanju.
Sanju?
Hi, I'm Sanjana. Got another Pepsi?
Sure.
This was the third second of Aishwarya Rai sort of bursting on the nation, where everybody rang me up after this commercial and said, "Who is Sanju?" Now we all know who Sanju is. She's Aishwarya Rai Bachchan. And this was her first major commercial. So this film to me is a milestone because it launched Aishwarya, it launched Mahima, and it launched the Indianness of Pepsi. Because from here, it was Yehi hai right choice, baby, to Dil Mange Mo, Aha. So when they Indianized, they became an Indian brand. And then we accepted them. But as long as it was an American brand, it was always struggling. So, next page. Pepsi mask.
उमड़ घुमड़ कर जीरा गरजे दिल ये डोले झूम के बोले तारे छूले प्यास बड़ी है और भी बढ़ ले अरे खोल के बंधन तोड़ के ताले ये दिल मांगे मोर
ये दिल मांगे मोर.
Aha! I believe this film has a life as long as Sachin has, possibly more. Because of two reasons. One is, why did we choose boys from a basti and not rich kids from a high-rise when they could afford the Pepsi and these kids probably could not? One reason. The line was, Ye Dil Mange Mo. Ye Dil Mange Mo is not about drinking Pepsi. Ye Dil Mange Mo is about dreaming big. Whose is a bigger dream? The boy in the basti wanting to be Sachin, or the boy in the high-rise who has everything want to be Sachin? So we chose the boys in the basti because they had a bigger dream. Now I'm going to leave you with this because we're also running short on time. And I want you to think about guys, what?
I think by popular demand.
Sorry.
Okay, one more, whichever
Okay,
one
one
you would
more.
like to show. Ye Dil Mange More is from the audience, so that is more important than any one of us.
Okay, let's go with Tata Safari.
Lines. Lines can keep you in. Lines can keep you out.
Lines can keep you out.
Some lines you don't understand. Some lines you can erase. Some you can't. Some lines you wait for. And some lines make you wait. Lines can keep you alive. Lines are with you till the end. But the only lines that matter are the ones you make. The new Safari Dicor 2.2. Reclaim your life.
So, the reason why I showed you these commercials is because I think they were made to be 2 and 2 is equal to 4. That was what the intention was. And the team that made the commercials made them into 22. And they have, in my opinion, they have a life forever. And I can show them to generation after generation, and they'll never have aged because of the value that they have created. So remember, 2 and 2 is equal to 22 and not 4 when it comes to value. Culture is all about value, and culture is dynamic. Culture changes every day. Thank you.